Hello and welcome back to Pensioners Corner. Today we are going to carefully walk through some very important updates from the Department for Work and Pensions, also known as the DWP. From September 2025, new housing support rules will officially take effect, and these updates will have a direct impact on pensioners and on many low-income households right across the UK. For a long time, many older renters have felt squeezed between rising rents on the one hand and frozen or outdated support rates on the other. The local housing allowance, which is the system that sets the maximum level of housing benefit depending on the area you live in, has not always kept up with actual rental costs. That has left many pensioners filling in the gap themselves, sometimes taking money out of their pension income just to keep a roof over their heads. The changes coming in September mark the first major adjustment in several years. According to the DWP, the goal is to bring support closer to the real costs that households face today. At the same time, these changes are not automatic for everyone, and that's why understanding the details really matters. There are three main areas affected. First, the local housing allowance rates themselves. Second, the housing element within pension credit. And third, the rules that apply to couples where one person has reached pension age but the other has not. Let's take each in turn and look at what they mean in practice. Starting with the local housing allowance. For pensioners who rent privately, this allowance effectively sets the cap on how much housing benefit can contribute toward rent. In areas where rents have risen sharply such as London, Manchester, Bristol, and many other towns and cities, the allowance has been falling behind reality. From September, the government will reset these caps. That means if your rent is higher than what your allowance currently covers, you may see an increase in the support you receive. This could make a very real difference. For example, imagine a pensioner paying £1,000 a month in rent, but only receiving £850 in housing benefit under the old rates. That left a £150 gap to cover out of pocket. Under the new rules, that allowance might be recalculated to cover £950 or even £975. While it may not close the gap entirely, it could ease some of the pressure on household budgets. However, and this point is crucial, these updates will not always happen automatically. In many cases, councils will reassess claims, but some pensioners will need to supply updated information, such as a new tenancy agreement or rent statement. If you do not respond to letters or update your details when asked, you may not see the increase applied. So the advice here is to be proactive. As soon as September arrives, contact your local council's housing benefit team and ask whether your allowance has been updated and whether any action is needed from you. That simple phone call or online inquiry could prevent weeks of delay. The second area of change is pension credit, specifically the housing element. Pension credit is already a vital lifeline for many older people on low incomes, and the housing element provides additional support to help cover rent. From September, this element will be aligned with the updated local housing allowance rates. That means pensioners on pension credit should see their housing support adjusted in line with the new figures. According to the DWP, this adjustment will be made automatically. But, as with any major system update, there is always a risk of delays or errors. For that reason, it's strongly recommended that you check your pension credit payment in September and compare it with August. If your rent is above the old cap but your payment hasn't changed, it may be worth contacting the pension credit helpline to ask for clarification. The third area involves mixed-age couples. This is a complex part of the system that has caused confusion for many households. A mixed-age couple is one where one partner has reached state pension age but the other has not. Under the clarified rules taking effect in September, these couples will no longer be able to apply jointly under pension credit for housing support. Instead, the younger partner will usually need to claim universal credit, which has its own housing element, while the pension age partner remains on pension credit if eligible. This division means households will need to be very clear about who is applying for what. It can feel complicated, but the aim of the new guidance is to remove the grey areas and make it more consistent across the country. The key point for mixed-age couples is communication. Make sure both partners understand which benefit applies to them and how rent support will be covered going forward. Now, let's step back and consider the bigger picture. These changes might look like technical policy updates, but in reality, they have very real consequences. They can affect whether pensioners feel secure in their homes, how much rent support actually arrives in their bank account each month, and what actions need to be taken to avoid delays. Who will benefit most from these changes? Pensioners living in high-rent areas are likely to see the greatest improvement. For those who have been covering large shortfalls out of their pension income, the increase in support could mean more money left for essentials like heating, food, or transport. On the other hand, pensioners in lower rent areas where their housing costs were already covered under the old rates may not see any difference. While that may feel unfair, it simply reflects the fact that the local housing allowance is linked to the rental market in each area. Another group who need to pay particular attention are pensioners whose claims are not updated automatically. If you miss a letter or fail to provide the requested paperwork, you could miss out on the additional support altogether. That is why it is so important to stay alert and make sure your records are up to date. It's also worth noting that these changes do not affect the timing of payments. Housing benefit will continue to be paid according to your local council's usual schedule, whether that's every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks. Pension credit payments will also follow the same timetable as before. What will change is the amount, not the dates. That consistency is helpful for budgeting. Let's bring this into perspective with some examples. Consider a pensioner renting a flat in London at £1,200 per month. Under the old system, their housing benefit might have covered only £950, leaving a £250 gap. With the new rules, their benefit might rise to £1,050 or £1,100. That still leaves a shortfall, but it reduces the gap and takes some strain off their finances. Now think about a pensioner in a small town where rents average £500 or £600. If their rent was already fully covered, the new allowance might not change anything for them. That shows why outcomes will differ depending on local circumstances. It is also important to see these housing changes as part of the wider support picture for pensioners. Alongside the housing updates, the state pension will continue to rise each April under the triple lock system. That means pensions will increase in line with whichever is highest average wage growth, inflation, or 2.5%. In addition, the government has announced further cost of living payments for the most vulnerable households. Together, these measures aim to provide some stability for older people facing rising prices. So what should pensioners do now to prepare? First, if you are on housing benefit, contact your council in September to confirm whether your local housing allowance has been updated. Second, if you are on pension credit with a housing element, check your September payment against your August payment and raise any concerns if nothing has changed. Third, if you are in a mixed-age couple, make sure you understand which partner needs to apply for which benefit and how your rent support will be structured. The best source of official and up-to-date information is always the government website, Gov UK. That site provides detailed guidance on housing benefit, pension credit, and universal credit, including examples and calculators to help you understand your own situation. If you are uncertain, phoning the DWP helpline or your local council is the quickest way to get clarification. Patience will be important because councils and the DWP will be processing thousands of updates at once. But being patient does not mean being passive. The key message is to be proactive, ask questions, keep your documents ready, and double-check your payments. And one very important reminder before we close. This video is based on official information available at the time of recording. Policies can change, details can be updated, and new guidance can be issued. Always check Gov UK or speak directly to the DWP for the most accurate and current information about your benefits. Here at Pensioners Corner, our goal is to keep you informed, calm, and prepared without confusion or unnecessary worry. Housing support is a lifeline for many pensioners, and by staying informed, you can make sure you continue receiving the help you are entitled to. Thank you for joining us today. If you found this breakdown helpful, please consider subscribing to Pensioners Corner so you don't miss future updates on pensions, benefits, and practical advice for older people across the UK. Stay well, stay informed, and until next time, take care.